while the weather outside is frightful. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 preview edition of On the Sports Lines. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I am Jay Kaplan.
I am Anthony Strait.
I'm David Shepard.
Welcome as we have our NBA preview show, one of the last shows of 2020. Thank God. Anyway, we welcome in David Shepard tonight, one of our old friends. It's a man who works for NBA Radio, has a page on YouTube called The Good Shepherd. Haven't seen too much new stuff in a while there, but always look at his old stuff. And he has a lot of good takes out there. Good evening, David.
Hey, man, Rabbi, thank you for having me, man. Look at you with the rocking the ear headphones, coming out.
And the headphones and the old school Hartford Whalers t-shirt, my friend.
I like it, man. Hey,
actual colors tonight. All right.
And I'll tell you something, Jay Anthony.
Yeah.
Rabbi's smart because he understands that a lot of times follicles can get ruined by those old school or new school, whatever you want to call them. So having them around the back of your head is the way to go.
That's right. It's used for every line of work. Anyway, we're going to do all things Knicks, Nets, NBA predictions, and analysis, and everything. You can just throw it out the window after 2 months. But we do it tonight, right here on December 16th. Anyway, let's start off with the opener. The Rockets' James Harden saga has reached yet another level. Harden still wants to be traded, even though he's finally made his way into Rockets camp. And even though the team made free agent signings and trades to appease him, because it's his team and he's under contract for said team, you would think the storyline is closed. No. The era of player entitlement is just really coming full circle. Players don't really even know what a contract is anymore. So we're in a pandemic state. Oh, in the NBA. Although pandemic's not really the right word to use. Let's analyze Harden and the state of this era in general, starting with our boy, Dave.
Well, I mean, listen, the reality is there was an article that came out today, and basically the premise of the Rockets for the last 8 seasons has been give James whatever he wants. And so that includes 5-time All-NBA first team Dwight Howard. And I'm not talking about Lakers Dwight Howard, where sometimes he would disappear in, every single game. I'm talking about a guy that was the second or third best player in the NBA. You get him Chris Paul, a 4-time All-NBA first-team player, one of the top 5 point guards to ever live, in my opinion. You see what he's doing now at 35 years old. You not only get a guy that's a former MVP, a la 2017 MVP Russell Westbrook, but you get someone that for all intents and purposes is one of James Harden's closest friends in the NBA. And the reality is every single time, it hasn't worked out. Instead of James Harden saying, you know what, I got to improve my game. When it comes to the postseason, when it comes to the Western Conference Finals, I'm on E. And I don't mean that kind of E. I mean empty. Your gas tank, right? So that's a James Harden thing. Because LeBron James in year 17, he finds a way to be in the best shape at the end of games, at the end of seasons. We saw that from Michael in year 15. We saw that from Kobe in 2010 when he was in his 15th season. Harden was in his 11th season and never went the distance like those guys, so he doesn't have the same tread on their tires. But yet the guy is entitled enough and pompous enough and arrogant enough to say, it doesn't start with me. I'm pointing the finger and blaming everybody else. But you can do that in the NBA where you don't take accountability and you put the fan base, and more importantly, or less importantly, if you're the Rockets, you put your squad against the wall. It's very disappointing. And the last thing I'll say, guys, is I don't like the fact that he's holding his team hostage. Because when you tell the NBA public and the NBA brethren that you do not want to be there anymore, and it is obvious in every way, shape, and form, now your team doesn't have the leverage.
Yeah, I kind of feel a little bad because this is my mother's favorite player. But you know what? It's
not anymore. Not anymore.
You know what? Total lack of professionalism, and I say this because, look, whatever his motive for wanting to leave Houston, that's one thing. But show up for work. I mean, you cannot be out and about clubbing while the league is trying to get its season together, putting in the proper protocols for COVID to prevent these outbreaks that we've seen in these other sports. And here you are in a nightclub, you're throwing money around. And by the way, he played Tuesday night. looked out of shape. He was 3 of 10 shooting. Did not look like he was in any basketball shape whatsoever. There was a photo of him kind of looking a little heavier.
Yes,
I don't know how real that was. But yeah, but it's the lack of professionalism. Look, yeah, you have an agent to take care of off the court stuff. Your responsibility to take care of things on the court. And when you look at the fact that the Houston Rockets have really for the better part of a decade given him anything he wanted, and the fact that James Harden is kind of going about doing things his way in spite of the fact, it does kind of brings a question mark into, okay, who was really the problem in these dynamic dual relationships that James Harden has had in the last decade? Was it really Dwight Howard? Was it really Chris Paul? Was it Russell Westbrook? I mean, you got to think about this. Mike D'Antoni was let go after the Rockets lost in the playoffs, and you got another head coach in, and there was talk going around that maybe Harden wanted out of Houston because Mike D'Antoni was a coach that didn't hold him accountable for anything. And you saw it on the court that he would dribble away 20 seconds of a shot clock before he did anything, which, I mean, as a player, you don't want to do that. And then you don't want to sit around and watch him do that. But also, you saw it on the defensive end, too, more importantly. So James Harden is really taking a really tone for the worse in being a professionalism, being a professional and doing his job. I mean, you think about this. Look, whatever like I said, the reason he wants to get out of Houston, that's his business. I don't know what that is about. But show up for work, okay? That is your prerogative. You are still under contract. If you want to get traded, work with the team, do what you got to do, and go from there. But showing up late, then having to pass 6 COVID tests before you can even practice with your new teammates, and putting the Houston Rockets organization in this craziness. I mean, it's just simply inexcusable.
It's a lose-lose situation. And before I get into this, one thing it really mentioned to me about the Mike D'Antoni situation, Mike D'Antoni and how lax he was, is Russell Westbrook couldn't take it.
Yep.
That was something I thought that was really interesting, how Russell Westbrook was just pissed off at that culture, and now we know why he wasn't a good fit. Oh, you got your hands ready. Go to town, Jay.
Buckle up, guys. Here we go. All right. On the whole, I have no problem with the NBA as a player-driven league. The stars have power, can dictate a lot of things, including where they decide to play and, to a certain extent, who they play with. LeBron started when he took his talents to South Beach. It took off from there, and it doesn't show any signs of stopping. But sometimes a star player goes too far, and the drama in Houston with Harden is exhibit A, B, and C. Look, we all know there's a huge difference between being one of the best players in the league and being a leader. Harden is unquestionably a top-tier talent as a player, but based on what I've seen and read, he is not a leader. He does not make players around him better, and he does not hold them accountable for their actions on or off the court. The lack of accountability, which starts with Harden, was called out by Russell Westbrook, as Rabbi alluded to this year, as it had been by Chris Paul before him, as a big reason Westbrook wanted to leave after being reunited with his former OKC running mate after only 1 season. If Westbrook, who, as Dave said, is one of Harden's best friends in the NBA, could not get him to be accountable, then how could he get the rest of the team to do so? And according to that piece on ESPN that was published today, a former Rockets staffer summed up the team culture in 3 words: whatever James wants. And that's why it doesn't matter whether he stays in Houston for the remaining 2 years on his contract, and Houston has indicated that they are fine with the uncomfortable situation, or if his trade demands are met. Harden is never going to win a title because he just doesn't care about anyone but himself. He throws temper tantrums demanding the organization upgrade the team and get him a star running mate, but then he runs every one of them out of town. And he'll do the same to John Wall if the Rockets don't send the former MVP elsewhere before then. And I have to laugh, guys, at the destinations he's demanding to be traded to. Philly? Ha! A, he doesn't fit with that team, and 2, Daryl Morey has stated that he has no intention of trading Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons. You have to wonder if one of the reasons why Morey wanted out of Houston was that he was finally fed up with trying to appease a spoiled child. Brooklyn? Bigger? Ha! Harden may want to play with KD, but once again, he doesn't fit with that team, and Houston has said they don't want Kyrie as part of any trade package. It also makes you wonder if the reason D'Antoni wanted out so fast is the same reason. And Milwaukee, forget about it. Come on, guys. It's not with the moves that they just made. Miami, Pat Riley has no patience for players with a diva attitude like Harden. And y'all remember how Jimmy Butler reacted to teammates not being held accountable in Minnesota. I really hope the Rockets stick to their guns and not reduce their high demands for what it will take to get them to part with Harden. Harden has zero leverage, and the Rockets shouldn't allow him to gain any. And I'm going to leave you with this, guys. Is anyone really buying Harden accepting a trade to a team where he would be the Robin to an existing Batman just so he can get a ring? I mean, come on, the high-usage, ball-dominant player who is indifferent on offense when the ball is not in his hands and pays lip service barely to defense, be it team or individual. The player who was sixth man in OKC with KD and Westbrook and deferred to them on offense, picked these spots to take over when one or both were subbed out, that player would have paired perfectly with CP3, John Wall, or anyone else Houston put alongside him in the backcourt. But that player is long gone, and the unprofessional, petulant man-child that's in his place is the worst case of player empowerment going horribly wrong. He is never going to win a title, and to be honest, he doesn't deserve to.
He doesn't deserve it at all. He doesn't deserve it at all, and I actually changed my opinion on it since reading that. Although I disagree, I think he would go to Brooklyn to be Batman 2. I don't think he would be a Robin, but I think he would be equal with Durant.
Not going to happen if Houston doesn't want Kyrie.
Oh no, absolutely no, not 100%. But God, for your sake, Jay, I hope he doesn't go to.
Oh yes, please. I really hope that Morey. One of the reasons Morey left is because he was so fed up and he doesn't.
I don't know if that's the case though. You're kind of assuming that.
I hope
that's the problem.
It's my
anyway. Just to kind of put this into full perspective, Anthony Davis has done it. Paul George has done this. Kyrie Irving did this in Cleveland, and all of them left. And unfortunately, even though the price isn't right, Bob, it's not. It looks like it's not. It's going to happen eventually for James Harden. I know the Rockets have these deep trade demands, but I almost think it's going to be not an if, but when. And this is from the poor, stupid soul who picked the Rockets to win the NBA championship last year. I don't know why I did that. I was probably
moving on.
Next Tuesday, the association begins another regular season, and it will actually start blocks away from Anthony's home at the Barclays Center when the Warriors come to town. Although a very short-handed net team made it to the playoff bubble in 2020, they were a first-round casualty. But the Nets will have two major additions. I think you'll heard of them to that seventh-place team in the Eastern Conference. Kyrie Irving, a man who does all of his talking on the court, and that was literally true for a few weeks, and Kevin Durant, who is, let's be honest, one of the top three players in the world when healthy, if not the best player in the world when healthy. All right, let me tell you out some questions right now to find out where Brooklyn is actually at. Dave, with Kevin Durant coming back from an Achilles injury, what are the expectations of the former MVP?
Bravo, you stole my thunder. And that might be pun intended because we know he was the Thunder from 2007 to 2016. But, look, I mean, here's the thing. The question I would have for you guys, and really when we talk about his injury, Amari Stoudemire, Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah.
Those are the two examples I can think of where when they were at their zenith and at their peak with the Achilles, they were able to resemble not their full selves, but certainly an all-star caliber player. Now, guys, was Dominique Wilkins a finals MVP?
No.
No, right? Was Amari Stoudemire a finals MVP?
Nope.
Oh, God, I only wish he was.
Okay, now, I want you to name me. You know I was going here with this, but I want you to name me the last 30 years guys who won back-to-back finals MVPs.
Start with KD. I mean, that's the captain obvious answer. I know you were looking.
That's the list. That's it. That's
30 years. No.
In the last 30 years.
Thank you.
MJ.
Thank you, Anthony.
Kobe, Shaq.
Kobe is one.
Kobe's
Shaq
one.
is one.
Shaq is another. Michael Jordan, of course.
Yep.
LeBron has done
Okay.
it too.
All right, Anthony, I want you to name those four other guys besides KD. Again.
Outside
Go
Kevin
ahead.
Durant.
Yeah, you just named them.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
say them, just say them
Kobe.
again.
Yeah,
Yep.
Kobe, Shaq,
Yep.
Michael Jordan, LeBron
Yep.
James.
Okay. Guys, top 10 players of all time? Would you dismiss that notion of any other of those four?
No.
No.
Probably Shaq would be the closest to, but that would be like 11, 12, or 13.
Okay. Now, this is the point I want to get to. Kevin Durant, does he have the athleticism of LeBron James?
Yes.
When healthy.
Oh,
yes.
absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
What?
Absolutely. We'll talk about it, but yeah, absolutely.
Wait a minute. LeBron James, when he gets ahead of steam, you can't stop him. He's too fast.
True.
He's too strong. He jumps still. Year 18.
That's true, but
jumps
Dave,
too
you and
high.
I both know that athleticism in a basketball player takes many different forms.
But Jay, that's not my question though. My question is LeBron James, if you look at speed, agility, vertical.
All right, if you're going to go that way, yes, I will grant
Okay.
you more
Hey,
athletic.
that's all I'm looking for. You guys want to be difficult tonight, but that's what I'm looking for. All right. Kobe, better athlete than KD?
Yes.
Thank you. Shaq, size, speed. There has never been a player 7 feet. I include David Robinson in that conversation that's like Shaq, right?
Of course.
Is that fair? Now,
Yeah.
lastly, do I even have to ask you about Michael Jordan?
No.
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 We're good.
No.
So here's the point. Athletically, I ain't worried. Because we just mentioned the company Kevin Durant is. He's among icons. He's among the greatest to ever do this. So, Rabbi, he doesn't have the athleticism of those guys, meaning his Achilles is not going to impact him the way it even would a Michael, a Shaq, a Kobe,
Yeah.
a LeBron
All
James.
right, from that point, Dave, yeah, because athleticism is not the focal point of his game to begin with. I got you.
Sure. But guys, the whole point of that was I just wanted to get MJ, Kobe, LeBron, and Shaq in this conversation. I took you guys in 5
And
different
now you don't
units of
have to
circle.
go watch Dave's YouTube channel because you just gave him a bunch of episodes right there.
Thank you. But Rabbi, I ain't worried about KD. He's an icon. We're talking about one of the all-time greats. Will he be the best player on a contending team? You better bet your effing ass he will be.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Kevin Durant is going to be a game changer, and he's like a 13-1 odds for MVP right now. That's pretty damn good odds, especially if the Nets do what I think they're going to do in 2020. All right, Anthony. Oh, damn it. We gave you the Kyrie Irving question?
We always give him
All
the
right.
Always give me the Kyrie Irving question.
All right,
Come
on-court
on.
stuff only, please. Well, you can talk about the off-court stuff, too, if you want. What are the expectations from the man who loves chess and his fun?
Well, he's expected. Well, for me, the expectation would be for him to just simply stay on the court. I mean, much we just talked about Kevin Durant and coming back from the Achilles. You forget Kevin Durant's one of the purest scorers the league has ever seen for a guy who is 7 feet tall with an almost 8 foot wingspan. Kyrie Irving is the polar opposite. He is a guy who relies on his speed and his quickness, and he has been so brittle throughout his career. Last year, he was limited to just 20 games because of the shoulder. And you think about his career, and even going back to his days at Duke, it's almost like it's a given that he's going to miss games because he has these injuries, whether it's the shoulder from last year, whether it's the knee injury that he suffered in the 2015 NBA Finals that actually cost him a portion of the following season as he recovered, or the other knee or another knee injury that cost him the second half of the 2018 season, his first season in Boston. He's only played 70 or more games, and I'm just talking about an 82-game season, and I'm talking about his strike short in the rookie season, which is only 66 games. In an 82-game schedule, he's only played 70 or more games 3 times. He's going into his 10th year in the league, and you look at Kyrie Irving, the list of injuries he's suffered in the last just 2 years alone. It looked like the board game Operation. You just pick a body part and see which one buzzes before you have to actually repair it. It's a shoulder, a knee, pulsar reasons, hamstring, right shoulder, knee, back, rest, thigh contusion. I've never seen a guy who was as talented as Kyrie Irving. A bit of a head case sometimes, but just so banged up. I'm trying to be polite here, okay?
Okay.
Look,
You're not doing it.
Dave, a very limited time here. I can't.
There's a difference between polite and lying. So
look, the fact is, look, there's a reason why Spencer Dinwiddie is so vital to the Brooklyn Nets, whether he's coming off the bench or even being a starter, because Kyrie Irving just misses games all the time, in every season, and that's a problem, because part of the combination of the Brooklyn Nets and their whole future as far as being a title contender, while it definitely rests on Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving has to be on the court to even be a Nightwing, let alone a Robin. And you look at his numbers. He averages 24, 25 a game. He's definitely one of the most amazingly gifted NBA players that you can have in a team. But you just want him to shut up every once in a while. Don't say anything. Please don't overthink it. But more importantly, you want him to stay healthy and to be durable and to try to get through. It's a less than 82 game season this time around, but to try to play at least 70% of the regular season games, and so that you can at least get to the playoffs, so you can try to be the Kyrie Irving that we saw in the 2016 finals. Never mind the shot. I'm thinking about the Game 5 Kyrie Irving when he scored 40 points along with LeBron James to keep the Cavaliers alive in that series. The Brooklyn Nets need that Kyrie Irving to come back, not this unknown guy who wants to speak to the media 1 minute, doesn't want to speak to pause the Nets, and missing 20 games, and then is trying to convince everyone to start their own league. And they don't need that guy. They need 2016 NBA Finals Kyrie Irving to show up in Brooklyn if they want to even try to get out of the Eastern Conference, let alone try to compete for a championship.
Indeed.
I think definitely, the Men in Black sticks. I think Kyrie just needs that Men in Black stick for his entire time in the Boston Celtics. By the way, I'm looking up Nightwing now. Anyway, let's move on to Jay. Give me a player to step up for the Nets. They had a really good season last year without the big two. So which player of that group needs to step up this year?
The guy I'm looking at is someone that I talked about a lot during the bubble, and that's Karis LeVert, who head coach Steve Nash has thought about as the Nets version of Manu Ginobili. Come off the bench as the sixth man, lead the bench units, close out the game with the starters. Nash thinks that this is a great luxury to have. The thought that LeVert could get more reps with the ball in his hands if he captains the second unit for two stretches during a game and then plays with the starters at moments or to close, Nash is liking the possibilities there. I mean, all that stuff still has to be figured out according to Nash, but he thinks it's a great decision for a coach to have. And I can't say, I disagree with that. LeVert had a solid 2020 season overall, 18.7 points per game, a little over 4 boards and 4 assists. Shot 42.5% from the floor, 36+% from three, 71% from the line. His turn as the primary ball handler, number one scoring option in Jacques Vaughn's offense in the bubble was a flat-out success. 25 points a game, 6.7 assists, almost 5 boards and 1.5 steals in Orlando. He only shot 26% from 38, but that was partly due to the way offenses were guarding him, knowing that he was the player they had to shut down. Look, LeVert is at his best with the ball in his hands, and his assist numbers in the bubble suggest that he could indeed be better served coming off the bench, setting up shooters like Taurean Prince and TLC, and pairing with Jared Allen as a pick-and-roll option, which is a lineup very similar to the one he played with when the Nets were in the bubble. Look, with KD and Kyrie being so ball-dominant, LeVert's shooting will likely improve from playing alongside them, but he'd probably be able to do more with the Nets reserves than their 2 stars. LeVert being in the closing lineup would be good for defensive purposes, however, and add a diverse scoring threat to that mix. Look, LeVert's had to play many roles with the Nets in his 4-year career, including role player, secondary scorer, and go-to guy, and he's produced in each one of them. I don't see that changing no matter how Nash chooses to deploy him. There's no reason the Nets' third star has to be part of the starting 5. Manu did it in San Antonio. No reason Karis can't do it in Brooklyn.
It's funny, though, because I think one of the big things, especially getting Kevin Durant back to the level that he's at, and obviously you can't go from 0 to 100 real quick, is going to be how Karis LeVert does with the second team, because the Nets can put out a second 100%. Team out there. I'm going to quickly mention what I expect from Steve Nash. Obviously, first-time coaches, but Steve Kerr did a seamless transition to being the head coach of a world champion for 3 out of 4 years with the Warriors, and almost 4 out of 4 in a row. The players have to respect him, and I think right now everybody does respect him, especially your stars, KD and What will happen when that first 2 to 3 game losing streak comes in? Teams are never really functioning well when like that, like when they're on a downswing. And again, as Anthony has told me many times, Kyrie and KD are not the most media-friendly people. KD gets his feelings hurt every 5 seconds, and Kyrie, again, has called everybody pawns and goes to media blackouts from time to time. That's going to be the key for Nash, to kind of keep his 2 stars in check, because unlike the Rockets, it's not what KD wants and what Kyrie wants. Right now, at least, it seems like it's what the team wants. What do I expect the Nets to do? Their goal is to be a top 2 team. I don't know if the NBA Finals is the destination in year 1, especially with Milwaukee kind of coming back a little bit stronger with a little bit of added motivation now that Giannis is theirs for 5 more years. Boston is still a very complete team. Philadelphia could be in that mix if they got James Harden, but we're not going to talk
No, stop it. Stop it. Bite your tongue.
I'm biting my
Bite your
tongue.
tongue.
Right I am. But I expect the Brooklyn Nets to be a contender, obviously. I don't expect them to fall on their face like a lot of people might think they're going to do, because there's not a lot of time left, really, especially in this era of player empowerment. You have a bad season, KD and Kyrie might want out. All right, moving on. As said before by myself on a previous show, the Knicks have had a pregnancy cycle since they've actually had a meaningful game. They'll start it on Wednesday. After a season with only 45 losses, oh, wait, I'm sorry, it wasn't a full season. They only had 21 wins. The Knicks are finally back on the court a week from now in Indiana, the state of the Cleveland Indians retirement tour in 2021. But this is about the Knicks. Jay, you go first. What do we expect from the second go-around of the R.J. Barrett experience?
Yeah, I'm looking for the standard improvement you normally see from year 1 to year 2 as rookies get used to how basketball is played at the NBA level. Look, he's under a new head coach. Barrett will have a new scheme to learn on each side of the ball, but that should not get in the way of the improvement in certain specific areas where Barrett was lacking last season. He averaged 14 a game, 5 boards, 2.6 assists, but he shot poorly from the field, only 40% from the floor, only 32% from 3, and worse from the line at a little over 61. Granted, that improved to 68.3 from the line once the calendar turned to January after shooting 54% before that. And he only occasionally showed the type of slashing and finishing chops that might offset his weakness from the perimeter. Took 48% of his non-garbage shots at the rim. That was in the 91st percentile across the NBA, but converted only 54% of those attempts. That's 23rd percentile in the NBA. And when you couple that with an unremarkable free throw rate, only 4.5 per game, it's a bit of an issue when that's supposed to be your defining skill, getting to the rim. Worst of all, he just never seemed to pop athletically the way you might expect from a number 3 overall pick. And that was on display most in pick and roll situations where he finished in the 25th percentile in points per possession. As the ball handler, his jump shot didn't scare anyone, and he struggled turning the corner on the pick and rolls, turning the ball over on almost 13% of his pick and roll possessions. Look, these are the areas Barrett needs to specifically improve upon, especially when your new head coach is saying things like, quote, whatever your strengths are, play to those strengths. Getting to the line is very important. Getting layups, getting dunks, getting shots in the restricted. Look, when the face of your franchise player expected to lead your team and be the number 1 option on offense is not an elite athlete nor an elite shooter, but is relentlessly aggressive, there is some cause for concern. But if Barrett can improve his jump shot so the teams at least have to respect him from the perimeter, keep his free throw percentage in the upper 60s to low 70s, and modify that relentless attacking rim style to be a more efficient finisher at the rim, then not only will Barrett make the leap we think he can in his development, maybe the team can make a leap in their development as well.
Well, we'll see. R.J. Barrett doesn't really strike me as a star, unlike picks number 1 and 2 in the NBA draft do, in Zion Williams and John Morant.
That may be fair.
But they're once in generational talents. All right. With apologies to all of our viewers in Kentucky, Anthony, you get the player to step up this question. Question this time from Kentucky Light North in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, you know what? I want to focus on another top pick for the Knicks from 2 years ago, and it's Kevin Knox. I mean, you think about this, he was one of the youngest players in that 2018 draft. coming out of Kentucky. And he had a solid rookie campaign, 12 and a half points a game, just under 5 rebounds a game in 28 minutes. And the first season and the second season was complete night and day. Inconsistency, he struggled last season. He literally fell out of rotation on some nights. It went from 12 and a half a game to 6 points a game, barely 3 rebounds. And he saw his minutes decline from close to 30 minutes a game to just 17. So Kevin Knox this is a make or break year for Kevin Knox in year 3. And most franchises really don't want to give up on a young talent like Kevin Knox, who have shown promise in the past so soon. But when you have a new coaching regime in Tom Thibodeau and a front office staff that may not, that kind of inherited him from the previous regime, Kevin Knox doesn't really have much wiggle room. And the fact that he's actually backing up Reggie Bullock speaks volumes, because Reggie Bullock is obviously an NBA journeyman who's been played on 7 teams in the past. The thing is, though, he's 6'7". He has the size, the shooting ability, and the wing defense that would make a solid NBA player. It just haven't been able to piece it together. Maybe having assistant coach Kenny Payne on the Knicks coaching staff may actually help. And the fact that he coached them in Kentucky, well, he scored 15 points a game in his last year and shot with 35%. But this is definitely make or break. I mean, tonight, the preseason game against Cleveland, he scored 16 off the bench, so that's a good start. But Kevin Knox has really got to show to be more consistent, because at this point, there's really no reason, with the expectations and the promise that he showed in his rookie season, why he is not the starting small forward. And you think about it with R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and now Obi Toppin being two that has the future foundations for the Knicks moving forward. Kevin Knox has been lost in the shuffle. He's going to have to play his way back into the rotation, let alone into the future plans of the Knicks.
And you're going to have to work hard, especially, and I'll mention in a second, in a Tom Thibodeau-led team, because there's a set rotation the Knicks have right now. And again, not a lot of expectations. Anyway, Dave, point guard has always been a position of strength for the Knicks in many, many a times. What do we expect from this 5-star position for the Knicks in 2020? No laughs from anybody after that? Come on now.
So to me,
it's depressing to laugh.
So it is a make or break year for Kevin Knox. And to what Jay said about R.J. Barrett, there's a lot of truth to it. And he showed a lot of promise. But the two things that those guys have that Alfred Payton does not have is pressure. Because when you go to Duke and when you're Kevin Knox and you've already played in New York, and people associate with you as a New York Knick, that's heavy. With Alfred Payton, I don't think a lot of people even realize that he plays for the New York Knicks. I mean, let's just be honest.
Do.
All right. You do. Okay. All right, Mr. Confident.
Well, it's because I had to talk about outlet point guard.
Okay. Where do you go to college? Where do you go to college?
I don't remember.
Okay. You guys may have not even heard of this college. He went to Louisiana Lafayette.
Okay. I do know that college.
I will give you guys, I'm going to go work very soon. Full disclosure, I'm probably going to make $200. I'll give up that right now. Face value. You don't have to pay me any taxes. Straight up. If you can name me one other player that went to Louisiana Lafayette and played in the NBA, you guys got 10 seconds.
Put us out of our misery, Shep. Come on. We're probably going to kick ourselves when you say the name, but go ahead and tell us.
No, the only guy is Andrew Toney.
Wow, as a Sixer fan, I should know that.
That's it, right? So here's my point. Alfred Payton has had to work for every single thing that he has gotten and achieved in the NBA. R.J. Barrett, man, when you're Nash's godson, come on now, right? When you're Kevin Knox and you're born with the height that he has, a lot of things are handed to you. I'm not saying work ethic wasn't put in, but they didn't have to grind. They didn't have to really put themselves in the gym. They didn't have to overcome hardships. They didn't have to look doubters in the eye and say, despite where I went to school, I'm going to show that I'm a proven NBA player. Those two guys haven't had to do that. Alfred has. And so he was an all-NBA rookie player. And we know last season he averaged over 7 assists per game. Now, 7 assists per game guys don't grow on trees. There's only so many Ricky Rubios, but here's the difference now. Alfred Payton can score the basketball. I'm not saying he's Chris Paul, but to me, he's one of the top 5 facilitators in the NBA, and he can rebound with the best of them. Guys, next show we do, I'm asking you, Louisiana Lafayette. I'll be very, very disappointed. I'm looking at you, Jay Kaplan, especially. Man, we're talking about an NBA champion. You got to get that one right.
Next time, Shep.
Is that the
I agree, Rabbi, I agree with him on Peyton, and I think I mentioned that when we were doing our preview show last year. Your ball.
Is that the Raging Cajuns? Because I know that they have a damn good football. Well, I know they have a very good football team that that defeated Iowa State this year, and it's the reason why Iowa State's probably not going to get into the BCS. But that's another.
That's a different show.
Oh wait,
Rabbi,
yeah, that's
take a
right.
bow. Take a bow.
Thank you. CFP Sunday, by the way. All right, moving on. Actually, let me quickly talk about Tibbs. Different situation. New York. He's been in Chicago, so I think New York is a good town for him to be in. I don't know if he's going to mesh well with the media. I think he needs to stay on the low key. I think he needs to realize what part he is. He's part of a rebuilding process over there. I think finally, after all of these years, especially with Giannis doing the Supermax, I think it's finally time for the Knicks to admit they need to start. They're starting officially from the ground up. And I think this is the year where we finally really start to see that happen. I think they will make strides. I don't think a lot of people are expecting them to do much. I think the big expectations are coming on from a team that's outside of the top 8 from last year from Atlanta, who signed everybody and anybody to their team to kind of make Trae Young happy. There's nobody in the Knicks who needs to be made happy because RJ Barrett is a foundation piece, but is not by far anywhere near the person that's going to light up the world. I think the expectations for Tibbs is simple. Don't get into any controversies. Stay on the down low. And you don't need to count on this one, Chad. And the most important thing is get them to, I think, a 32-win season. I don't think 32-40 in the East is really a hard thing to do. They're not tanking for anybody. There's no big college player out there that's going to save them. There's no generational college player out there that's going to save them. Luka Garza might be, but I don't think his game is going to translate to the NBA, but that's not a big deal. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of an interesting adjustment period for Tibbs to New York. Hopefully, it's not a big adventure. Kind of like when David Fizdale said, take that for data, but I don't think he did that with New York. He was kind of a shell of himself there. All right, moving on. All right, we're going to talk about some old faces and new places because every year there is some old faces and new places. And the free agency started 2 weeks ago. The draft was 3 weeks ago. Off season. What is that? We're going to talk about 4 big acquisitions that were made via either trade or free agency in this offseason. And no, we're not talking about Gordon Hayward, who's already broken his hand in training camp. Good job, Gordon. All right, let's start with David about one of the new acquisitions in the NBA.
Your ball, Shep.
I'm going first in this?
Yeah, you're going first in this.
Were you not prepared?
I thought I was going third.
No, you're going first, baby. We're talking old faces in new places, not the team segment.
Oh, got you. Okay, we did it. Got it. Okay, so I was on the season preview. So okay, at least I follow the guidelines. So around the NBA, new faces in old places, or old faces in new places, or however you want to coin this segment. The guy to watch to me is Westbrook, and he's got the most to prove, right? Yeah. Because you're talking about a guy that let's be honest. I mean, he was Mr. Stat in Oklahoma City, and the argument was he can't win, and so he doesn't play winning basketball. And so what do the Thunder do? They say we're going to dispute that narrative. We're going to go out. We're going to get PG-13. We're going to get Carmelo Anthony. They fall flat on their face and lose to a much inferior team in terms of talent. Then we know they couldn't win against the Blazers, even though they had the better team, so he gets shipped off to the Houston Rockets. With the Houston Rockets, regular season winning record against the Lakers. Take game 1. The next 4 games, I don't recognize him. Mm-hmm. Let's just be honest. Now, John Wall, people can say whatever they want about John Wall, but he's the greatest player in that franchise's history since Elvin Hayes. Wes Unseld?
Wes Unseld.
Because Bradley Beal, I know he averaged 30 points per game last season. Where did it take him? John Wall made them winners. And so there's a lot of pressure on the shoulders of Russell Westbrook right now. Now, the last thing I'll say about him is he's an unbelievable athlete. He's an all-time great athlete, greatest rebounding point guard we've ever seen. I include Magic, Oscar Robertson, Jason Kidd, all those guys. But he cuts off his nose despite his face. He plays too hard. He salivates too much. He goes to 0-180 way too fast. But the knock against Russell Westbrook is he's his own enemy. And going into year 13, it's time you prove that that's not the case. He's reunited with his old coach in Scott Brooks. Let's see what happens, gentlemen. I won't quiz you on who went to UCLA because we already know that.
Well, there's like 9,000 players. We'd be here all day.
Okay, 1969 Finals MVP. No.
That's enough. Jay, you want to take the ball next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, think about this, guys. Of all the players who changed teams this offseason, no one had a shorter move than the 2026 Man of the Year who simply moved down the hall at Staples Center. And I'm talking about Montrezl Harrell here. But in terms of team culture, he might as well have moved from Earth to Mars. And I'll talk about this, when we get to the team segment, since the Lakers are the team I have. He's the wild card of all of the additions to the Lakers in terms of fit. Won that Sixth Man of the Year award based on, his 18.6 points and 7-1 boards that he averaged during the regular season. His playoff performance, however, was 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Top 15 points or better only 4 times in 13 games. Had only 1 game with more than 3 rebounds. 10.5 points and 2.9 boards is not going to cut it from the guy who, along with Lou Williams, was supposed to help the Clippers destroy other teams' bench units, which is why both myself and a lot of NBA folk are wondering how Harrell will fit and what he'll bring to the Lakers' rotation, especially come playoff time, which in LA is all that really matters. The good thing is that if Harrell does disappear in the playoffs again, or at any other point during the season, the Lakers still have Markieff Morris to fill in at that hybrid power forward center slot alongside AD. In theory, guys, Harrell gives the Lakers a relentless rebounder and interior attacker to back up AD or pair with him, depending on opponent and matchup. And that, along with the acquisition of Dennis Schrader, with whom Harrell could pair with on the pick and roll the way he did with Williams, would give the Lakers more firepower off their bench and could allow the Lakers to wreck other teams' reserve units, potentially increasing leads when either LeBron or AD rest. Look, playing Harrell next to a defensive player of the year candidate like AD allows the Lakers to hide his deficiencies on defense, something the Clippers could not do, as AD can play the 5 for stretches, especially during the playoffs, as he did this past season. As does another new addition to the Lakers, Marc Gasol. Look, the Lakers have to be hoping that the change of scenery, even if it's just down the hall, rejuvenates Harrell and returns him to the junkyard dog he was before the Clippers went all Hollywood with the acquisition of Kawhi and PG-13. If it does, then I think the Lakers will have one of the most formidable second units in the NBA, and that'll be something to keep an eye on.
And we'll talk about the Lakers in a moment. Let's go with Anthony.
Yeah, the player that I'm going with, by the way, he's actually playing right now on NBA TV. That's why I'm kind of turning my head to, looking over my shoulder. It's Chris Paul, who goes from the Oklahoma City Thunder to Phoenix, Arizona, and playing with the Suns. Now, you think about this. At 35, Chris Paul had probably one of his best seasons and kind of turned back the clock, and leading the young Oklahoma City Thunder team to the playoffs and very close to a first-round upset of the Houston Rockets. You think about this, 17.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists a game from Chris Paul, who was 35, who's had a lot of mileage and wear and tear on our body. And his leadership was so key in that Thunder locker room. Now you bring him to the Suns and you pair him with Devin Booker, who is a rising star, averaging 26 again. Now you got a backcourt that has scoring, playmaking, and passing all rolled into one. And the best thing about this is that Devin Booker does not have to worry about creating for his teammates as he done in the past and having to shoulder all the load as far as what the offense has done. Then you throw in DeAndre Ayton, who is who played very well in the bubble. The Suns went 8-0. You forget the Suns ran the table and barely missed making the playoffs in the bubble. Aiden averaged 18 points a game. He's developing his jump shot, which would be great when you think about Chris Paul. One of his specialties is the pick and roll. You need a big to kind of be a good mid-range shooter. They also added Jay Crowder, who is a great outside shooter off the bench. So the Suns, a team that haven't made the playoffs in a decade, you sort of kind of take those next steps. Monty Williams has done a tremendous job with this team. And I feel like maybe, with Chris Paul and not having a locker room leader, a guy who can kind of keep things intact, because there was rumors that Devin Booker was not happy and probably would request a trade out of Phoenix. Now with that kind of going by the wayside, maybe the Suns can probably sneak into the lower half of the Western Conference playoffs. It's a tough conference, by the way. There's a lot of good teams, but the Suns is one of those teams that you kind of keep an eye out for and kind of trying to take that next step. Maybe they could be an 8, maybe a 7 seed. I mean, think about this. We didn't think much of the Utah Jazz a few years ago with a rookie by the name of Donovan Mitchell, and all they did was get into the playoffs in the middle of the pack and even win a playoff series, knocking out OKC in the first round of playoffs. So a lot can happen if you could get into the tournament. And right now, you feel the way the Suns finished that bubble 8-0, including Devin Booker buzzer beater against the team I want to talk about next, the Los Angeles Clippers.
Absolutely. I do think Devin Booker
I think the Suns are a team to watch. Well, and Chris Paul being one of those reasons.
Yeah, I do think Devin Booker. By the way, I keep forgetting this, but remember, there is a play-in series now for the 7 and the 8. So all you have to do is make it to 10th in the Western Conference. So as hard as that conference is, I think 10th is a pretty reasonable statement for the Suns. I have them as the 5th best team in the conference, by the way. Which seems like
Suns and the Grizzlies are the two teams that may scare a few teams in the Western Conference. No. You don't want to win with John Morant after him being this close, and he's
absolutely. Absolutely.
Rabbi, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I got that. I'm looking at John Wall. I think the other half of that Westbrook trade is huge. I think in most ways, if God forbid James Harden accepts his fate and at least waits till the end of the season to get a trade, and the Rockets would probably do it at that point, Wall can be a Robin in this situation. He's been a Batman in Washington, but he hasn't played a full season since 2017, 2018. But he is a guy who, at his peak, in a good offense, and it seems like Stephen Silas is going to run as much of the same offense with probably a teeny bit more accountability than Mike D'Antoni did, but he can give you 20 to 25 points a game if you can. He's averaged the most is 23.1 points a game, but every single year, 19-9, 19-3, 17-6. The injury has changed him, but with the combination of, and again, I say this is a huge if, James Harden, and even a more motivated Boogie Cousins in the center position, who for right now seems to be at the healthiest he has been. Remember, he hasn't been on a court, and he wasn't on the court at all in 2019, 2020, whether it be in a bubble or out of the bubble. I think that John Wall is a player to watch. I really do. And again, even if he leaves, I think the combination of John Wall and James Harden can at least get them maybe into one of those play-in games, the 7-10 series or the 8-9 series. I even think that they could be the 6th best team in the Western Conference and do what pretty much the Oklahoma City Thunder did last year in the fuck you Russell Westbrook year and ended up playing them in the first round of the playoffs and almost defeating them. So I think John Wall is a player to watch, and I think he'll make the Rockets a fun team. All right, Dave, we're going to let you go. Add right to your job because I know you have a lot of stuff to do tonight where you're going to make $200 is what you exactly said on the show.
Oh, so I won the bet.
You won the bet. You're keeping your money. But I do want to ask you, we're going to do this in a little while by ourselves, but who do you have going in the NBA Finals in 2021?
NBA Finals, I have Mr. Giannis going against Mr. Leonard. And Giannis is going to teach Mr. Leonard that we're not in 2019. We're in 2021.
Wow.
Where I got a record 5-year, $228 million ultra ginormous extension for a very good reason. and I'm going to come back with a vengeance. And when I made that video on Twitter to the Milwaukee Bucks fan base, I meant every word. And everyone is going to be able to say Giannis Antetokounmpo and then their grandma. He's going to be a household name. We already know who he is, but the name itself, not everyone knows. They will after 2021, gentlemen. Mark my words.
Bucks over the Clippers. All right, Shep.
All right. I have a feeling two people on this show aren't going to agree. And I might be one of them.
Dude.
Anyway,
thank you back with us, man.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure, guys. Continued success,
Thank you,
all right?
Dave.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Dave.
We'll see you next time.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. All right. Unfortunately for us, we have one more second to go. So as we talk, Shepard is an amazing friend of ours. He's been watch the Good Shepard podcast, watch a lot of different things of his, and he works for NBA Radio. So gonna be a fun time as the NBA season begins.
It's been a great panelist too on our show. When we was in MNN, they even filmed it for me earlier this year.
Yes. And we now know about the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns for tonight. I can go all day about their football team. They're playing in the Sun Belt Conference this weekend against Coastal Carolina. But again, that's for another show. Anyway, let's move on. The NBA has had a 72-day gap, a whole 72-day gap between the end of the bubble and the beginning of what's going to be a interesting regular season. But hopefully for them, it will be the beginning of what will be a short stay in empty arenas, although I wouldn't hold my breath. So let's talk about two contenders in the East and two contenders in the West in our final segment tonight before we get to predictions. Jay, the Lakers are the defending champs. Do LeBron and the LeBronettes have the West's best team again?
You know what? I think once you finish doing the math, I think the additions and subtractions end up making the Lakers just as good, if not possibly better, than they were last season when they walked away with the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, Danny Green, Rajon Rondo, and Avery Bradley are out. Dennis Schrader, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, and Marc Gasol are in. It is unprecedented, guys, to see a championship roster turn over this much and yet possibly still improve. I mean, it started out on draft night, and we talked about it on draft night when the Lakers acquired Schrader from OKC for Danny Green. He gives them, the Lakers, a scoring-minded point guard with a defensive mean streak who is a clear upgrade at a position of need, especially with the loss of Rondo. Someone who can create for himself and others, fill that secondary, tertiary scorer role alongside LeBron and AD when one of the Lakers' dynamic duo is sitting, as well as when both are on the floor. Look, if he's used in the six-man role, he was runner-up to his now new teammate Harrell for that award. Though Schrader does want to be the starting point guard, and it would seem that head coach Frank Vogel might be inclined to go that way based on some of his comments made during training camp. And LeBron, should have a similar effect on Schrader that CP3 did on him in OKC, which should only improve, Schrader's continued development. And no matter how he's used, whether it's as the sixth man, or as the starting point guard, and he started in tonight's exhibition game against Phoenix, Schrader automatically, to me, guys, slides into that third impact player slot behind LeBron and AD that the Lakers have been looking for since the King came to La La Land. Look, and then you look at the rest of the acquisitions. Wesley Matthews is a straight-up replacement for Avery Bradley, which if he starts along KCP in the Lakers' backcourt, gives them, just another 94-foot defender to hound opposing point guard. Talen Horton-Tucker, remember the name, guys. Kid had a decent bubble experience, and Vogel has loved what he's seen from the kid in practice and the preseason. So his emergence as a potential rotation piece should add to the Lakers' depth. He's a high-energy wing, rangy defender, some ball-handling skills. And on a team that has only one true point guard in Schrader, that's where he could become valuable. Marc Gasol won't be as physical as Howard or McGee, but his basketball IQ, ability to space the floor, make the right pass, knock down a three, will come into play in the postseason, which is where, again, like I said before, is where it really matters for the Lakers. Look, and as I said in the previous segment, Harrell's the wild card here. Did not seem to be at his best in the bubble, did not seem to warrant the minutes Doc Rivers gave him in the playoffs, nor was he happy about the situation in the Clippers locker room, and he was not shy about telling folks about that. Will the change of scenery return him to the beast of the bench that he used to be? I mean, on top of all these additions, which, all of which I do believe makes them, which there was already a solid championship team roster, you get the Lakers re-signing AD and extending LeBron, which also improves the team. And not just from the obvious talent standpoint, guys. It means that the culture that Vogel created last season, the kind of team atmosphere that LeBron has been looking for since he left Miami, will continue. And if you don't think that's as important as upgrading the roster, just look down the hall at the other locker room in the Staples Center. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. First of all, I think Marc Gasol is probably the best addition of the group. Again, not only because you very rarely sometimes get someone who's won an NBA championship from the previous year to join the NBA championship of the year before that.
Yeah.
I applaud Rob Pelinka for not sitting on his laurels and really remaking this into an almost younger team. Because honestly, there was just depth, but there was almost no starting quality players last year on that team. And now you have a legitimate starting five. They are by far. By the way, the thing about Harrell is he couldn't defend Anthony Davis. He couldn't defend Jokic in the postseason, and that'll be his fatal flaw again. But I think at that point,
because the Lakers will put AD on Jokic, and like I said,
the Lakers can easily put AD on Jokic, but you got to make.
He won't have to guard guys like that.
Yeah, but I think they want AD to do a lot more work on the offensive end. But yeah, I think at the end, I think a healthy Anthony Davis is the one that really is the one that guards Jokic. Anthony, you've got the Clippers, your favorite topic. Do their offseason actually make them better?
Yeah, I have the team. I have the team down the hall that Montrezl Harrell escaped apparently, and along with several other former Clipper players. Look, the problem with the Clippers last year was chemistry, without question. Date back to last January in a game against the Grizzlies when they lost by 40 at home to the Memphis Grizzlies. I remember on our show, I said something was off with this Los Angeles Clippers team. I couldn't put my finger on it, but as much as everyone was writing them into the NBA Finals, I couldn't buy into it. Then they blew the 3-1 series lead. Then we see all the things that was coming out about the locker room situation and the special treatment with Kawhi and Paul George and Doc Rivers obviously being let go. And then you seeing guys like JaMychal Green and Montrezl Harrell, two guys who are now former Clippers, openly talking about the culture of the locker room. And, of course, the nail in the coffin was that article in The Athletic a few weeks ago that kind of broke down everything that was going on from Kawhi closing down the women's locker room in the Staples Center to warm up before games, to Paul George getting special treatment, and how the role players that was so good the previous year took exception to it. Zubac and Marcus Morris almost getting into a fist fight at one point. It was a mess. And the fact that, like, you have to go way back. I go back to the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles, the dream team, to think of a team that has so many expectations and fell flat on its face the way it did. Ty Lue obviously is the new man in charge, but you gotta think about this. And Doc Rivers mentioned this. He was sitting next to Doc Rivers as all this was going on. So I don't know how much of a change this is going to be. And also, they brought in Serge Ibaka to replace Montrezl Harrell, which is a great addition because he is because he's a Kawhi. He's close to Kawhi. Had one of his best seasons playing alongside Kawhi 2 years ago and helping the Toronto Raptors win their first NBA championship. But then again, this is a Clipper team in the front office that's again catering to a superstar. And I said this on our Facebook post a few weeks ago. The Clippers brought in two guys with champagne taste to a locker room, four guys who are all about that Henny. And it's a nice way of saying you brought in a couple of
divas.
A couple of superstars to a locker room for guys who was all about the grind. And you think about the Clippers' problems now is that they still don't have a point guard. I mean, they did not upgrade their point guard position, not in the draft. They tried to get Rajon Rondo over from the Lakers, and Rondo evidently went to Atlanta for a good contract.
More money.
That's going to be a fun thing to watch. Yeah, and more money. That's going to be fun to watch for him and Trae Young, how that plays out. But you look at the second unit, it's not as strong as last year. I mean, you got Lemon Pepper Lou Williams again coming off the bench, and he's going to have to carry a lot of scoring load. But then there's rumors that the Clippers want to move him as well because he was part of that locker room division that they were talking about, and he did not play well in the bubble also. You think about Patrick Beverly, a guy who really is a defensive-minded player, and he's not really that anymore because he hasn't played many minutes in the fourth quarter late in games last season. You got Reggie Jackson coming off the bench, a guy who fell out of rotation, has to play on his wall down because he couldn't stop Luka Doncic on one leg in the first round last year, which is why Jackson's minutes declined greatly. You got Zubac that's going to come off the bench for Serge Ibaka, but Zubac is a guy who was actually a well-rounded player for the Clippers. Now he's moving to the bench. Patrick Patterson's the backup power forward. Nick Batum is a guy that they kind of got off the scrap. A big contract with Charlotte that didn't quite pan out well. You're looking at this, it's like such a big, steep decline from the starting unit to the second unit, which was not the case last year. One of the strengths that we talked about, we raved about the Clippers, was their depth. They don't have much of it this year, and you have the chemistry problems. They gave Paul George his big contract, and Paul George described pretty much his comments personified the Clippers in a nutshell. When you complain about how Doc Rivers uses you as a Ray Allen, who is a Hall of Famer, or J.J. Redick, one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history, percentage-wise, and you're complaining about it, and the last image of you is hitting the side of backboard in Game 7. That is not a good look going into the season. And he's done a lot more talking than playing in the preseason as well. Look, I watched the Clippers' first two preseason games against the Lakers. No energy. It doesn't look like they're on the same page. I don't see how this team is ranked second in the Western Conference to come out to win an NBA title when they don't look like they right now. If I had to pick this Clipper team,
well, you do have a pick in that segment.
You do have a pick to go into the second.
But I know. But we're picking finalists. But if I had to pick with this Clipper team, I can't see them getting out in the first round. And this is the truth.
Okay. Hold on. Stop it now. We talked about how the West is like this. I don't think for a second with the talent that they have, they're not going to win a first round. I'm sorry. You're kind of overreacting to the situation. You're burying that.
No. Hold on now. I'm 2 for 2 with the Clippers. I called that.
But I'm not that team. You're going a little too far here.
I also said that I didn't see them getting past the Denver Nuggets. Now, granted, they were up 3-1, but there was a reason why the Nuggets came back, and that was because the Nuggets came together. They couldn't stop Jamal Murray. Jokic had a field day with them, and even the Nuggets as a team gelled together. Remember, they got out of the first round coming back from 3-1. This Clipper team was so good playing front runners last season that the moment they got punched in the mouth, they didn't know what to do. We saw that in the bubble. We're going to see more of it this season because now, after everything that's going on with the Clippers and what we heard about in the locker room, now guys can't wait to go at Kawhi Leonard. He's not the cyborg. That mystique is gone after Game 7. And Kawhi has a lot to prove. Paul George has a lot to prove. This team has a lot to prove, but I don't think they have the talent to back it up.
No, I'm no.
I'm not saying you're not.
Stop. No, you're not. But stop. I just don't think the whole narrative of the Clippers is they're dysfunctional and there's nowhere they can go. You're going into the hot take world. You're not seeing
they are dysfunctional, Rabbi. That's not a hot take.
They are absolutely dysfunctional, but they're still one of the two most talented teams in the East and the Western Conference, and they took their fucking foot off of the gas pedal last year. It's not like this was inevitable to happen. I think everybody is, you two especially, are piling on to a damn talented organization. Do I think they're going to reach the finals? No. But do I think that they're going to go so far as to not even make it out of the first round? Are you telling me right now that the Dallas Mavericks are a better team than them? No, stop. Let me finish off here. Because I think you two freaking pile on this team like crazy. You kicked the
I haven't
horse
gotten my
while
two
it's
cents
down.
in yet.
Okay, look.
You kicked the horse while it's down, and I'm annoyed with it.
All right, fine. Let me get my 2 cents in here. Look, because you're just going to beat your dead horse, and we know where you stand because you've been standing on that platform for the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the fact that you're beating that dead horse now because it's already dead.
All right, here's my thing with the Clippers, okay? Surely from a roster standpoint, they took a step backwards. They do not have quality depth anymore. I agree with Anthony on that. As far as I don't think that divide in the locker room has gone away. Paul George's comments can only further divide that locker room because you don't say things like that out in public. That is the type of thing that paints you as that reconfirms everybody's position that you are a selfish crybaby of a player. Okay, and I'm sorry, but here's the thing. I disagree with Anthony on this. I think they can very easily will get out of the first round because those two guys alone, if they had their A games on a given night, can get them past that. Do I think other teams in the West have leapfrogged them in terms of offseason improvements? Yes, and I'll tell you this: the best thing that can happen to the Los Angeles Clippers for their future, as things are standing right now, could it change in the next 2 years? Sure. But if nothing changes for them in the next 2 years, the best thing that can happen to that franchise is that Kawhi and PG both leave and they start over from scratch. And this time, stick to that junkyard dog, all for one for all mentality that they had built before those guys got there. And then if they want to go look for a superstar, find guys that actually have the right attitude.
Do you even watch the NBA? Do you honestly think
and I can tell you that.
Hold on.
Do
you honestly think now that the whole point is after one season where they were in a 7th game of a conference semifinals that the whole idea is, oh, the Clippers will never win with Kawhi Leonard, who is just 2 years ago carrying the Toronto Raptors to an NBA championship?
It's not about Kawhi. They're not going to win because of Paul George.
No, like that I can understand. But again, you have Kawhi, and you have the opportunity to trade later in the year. Do I think the Nuggets have passed them? Yes, I do. But I don't for 1 second think that a Kawhi-led team, that we should blow the whole freaking thing up in year one.
Oh, and they're not going to have to blow it up.
Ship.
Those guys are going to walk after their contracts up. Remember, it's just 2-year deals. Those guys are going to walk.
Hey, look, I'll say this right here on the show. Do I think the Dallas Mavericks are better than them? Yes. Think about this. You are just literally.
Yes, and I think the Denver Nuggets are better than them.
I think the Denver Nuggets are better than them, but not Dallas.
Look, think about how the players play out. You are one Kristaps Porzingis ejection from game 1 and season-ending injury, and an actual healthy Luka Doncic away from being upset. It took you 6 games to beat an injury-plagued Dallas Maverick team who took you to the wire in 5 of those 6 games. And you had a 3-1 lead because you are a team full of front runners. All talk when you're ahead. When you get elbowed in the stomach one time, you want to vomit. That's a different story. This Clipper team has an attitude that when adversity is there, we give Kawhi too much credit for what the Raptors did. There were 2 key guys in that locker room that held it together. Kyle Lowry, who is a very good vet, and Marcus Gasol, who's playing for the Lakers. And we forget about Nick Nurse and keeping Kawhi's ego in check. I didn't think he had that bad of an ego until all this came out. But Kawhi does have a lot to prove. Do I think they're going to win games? Absolutely. Do I think Kawhi Leonard's going to play like an all-star? Without question. I'm not going to take that from him. But in the playoffs, when teams off gel have gotten together, chemistry, locker room, relationships actually matter. And if you're not talking to your teammates between games, if you're just going about your business, if one player's going with their clique, that is not going to work. It works well when everything is great. It does not work well when adversity comes into the locker room. And that's where the Clippers fail miserably.
Yes.
And by the way, I didn't even get into Marcus Morris, who is just as bad when it comes to
Well,
chemistry.
Morris has been bad.
The
Absolutely.
reason why,
That was a terrible
and the
signing.
reason why Knicks fans don't miss on one iota either. But like I said, I'll finish my point here. I don't see the Clippers getting out of round one in the playoffs. The West is too good, and they've gotten significantly better, while the Clippers have taken a step back in the depth that made them such a favorite last year.
Yeah,
I think that's almost a hot take thing without actually looking at the facts. We're done with it. We're done with it.
We will revisit this conversation.
We will absolutely revisit this as we go along. But
because
I think
this story's not going away.
It never ends. I think it's one of our bugaboos of the entire show. Okay, the East does deserve some credit too. So let's talk about the presumptive favorites, and we'll start with the defending champs. The Miami Heat were one of the lowest seeds to ever make it to the NBA Finals. In fact, the lowest seed since the New York Knicks of 1999. They didn't do a lot in the postseason. They kept a good amount of their team. They kept Goran Dragic, who, if he wasn't injured, you might have said this could have been a 7-game series with the Los Angeles Lakers. They signed Bam Adebayo to a huge extension. I think he is one of the 20 best players in the league right now. So I think it'll be a very good fit with Jimmy Butler, who right now, and I think Jay is more surprised than ever, is very content in the Heat because, again, there is that accountability.
I'm not surprised. Miami, I mean, think about what I talked about in my about Harden. That environment, that's the type of environment that Butler has been looking for.
He's a Heat man. He's a Pat Riley man. He's the perfect definition of a Pat Riley superstar, and you saw it in the postseason.
Yeah.
They lost. We mentioned the loss of Jay Crowder, who is a big defensive presence, although offensively he almost disappeared at times in the NBA playoffs. He went to the Suns. Mo Harkless is going to be a very good, from Portland, is going to be a very good person to come off of the bench, and I think will provide this team with some depth. I think Avery Bradley, coming from the Lakers, is a huge
without a doubt.
Signing. I think he's going to need to get back into the game a little bit. He hasn't played in 9 months. Remember, he opted out of the bubble. It was an injury. But he can provide defense to what is already a defensive grinding team. And if you get the same performance out of Duncan Robinson as you got in the playoffs, and obviously Tyler Hero, I think that's going to be a good team. Kendrick Nunn's going to be the big thing because you don't remember he was the second rookie of the year. You don't remember he was rookie of the year, second place.
That's the thing. Everybody talks about how they had a quiet offseason, Rabbi, but if those three guys take the next step in their development, I mean, that's huge for this team.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, they may sleep on Miami, but they shouldn't.
They shouldn't, but I think right now we'll talk about the team in a second. You have the Nets, you have the Heat, you have the Celtics, and you have the Sixers. The Sixers cannot be ignored because of Doc Rivers and the real nucleus that they have around them. One of those teams can't win a first-round playoff series. Unlike the Clippers, one of those teams will actually lose a first-round playoff series. Okay, let's move on to the team, though, that is the very, very presumptive favorite to the East. They could win another 65, 66 games, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
They made the trade for Jrue Holiday, gave up a ton for him. I was about to say the bad word, but I didn't.
Well, you've already dropped an F-bomb, so you might as well go all in.
Well, they gave a shitload away for him, but they want to get a point guard to really facilitate the offense. So they really want a big three. They want to find a guy who can get shots in clutch time and take some pressure away from Chris Middleton. They did not get Bogdanovich from the Kings. He ended up going to Atlanta.
Yeah, that hurt.
It did hurt a little bit, but they have the depth might not be there either. They lost George Hill. They lost Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe is a very talented player, but was definitely his downs were worse than his ups. That is for damn sure.
Yeah.
So obviously the season is broken on Holiday, and I think the Holiday signing proved to Giannis that the Bucks want to win, and in result, he signed the supermax of 5 for $228. Bobby Portis, we all remember him from last year as a New York Knicks. 2 years, $7.4 million. He's definitely a guy who's going to be, when Giannis is not in the game, he'll be a good second team person. Torian Craig, who is a decent person from the Nuggets, but he didn't really get too much playing time. He can still come off the bench. However, all of this is great. All of this is amazing. But Giannis has been a different player in the postseason. I think, as you even saw it in that Heat series last year, when Giannis was pushed around, Giannis didn't push back. You saw that in the Raptors series 2 years ago, when Giannis was pushed around, Giannis never pushed back. You're talking about the Clippers being a front runner. Milwaukee had a 2-0 lead and just couldn't seal the deal. That 3 overtime game against Toronto in Game 3 set the stage for what was just the 4-game slide towards the end. I think Giannis needs to be the one that improves in the postseason. Giannis needs to be the same player from 1 to 82.
Pushing.
Yes, and again, he needs to be playing 40 to 45 minutes a night and not 35 to 38 minutes. Because, listen, those 10 to 12 minutes matter hugely, especially when you're a team with no depth. All right, guys. We have one more segment to go. Ladies and gentlemen, now we talk about what we might see in our crystal ball for the NBA Finals, which will end a month later than normal in late July. I will immediately edit this out of our final video, and we will never talk or speak unless I'm right. Then I'm taking that footage and I'm posting it on YouTube, and everybody is going to see it for months and months and months on end. Anthony, who you got in the 2021 NBA Finals presented by YouTube TV?
I have the Lakers coming out of the Western Conference. And in the East, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. You know what? I feel like, you know what? I think back to Giannis and his last 2 postseasons, struggling, particularly, when it mattered the most, when Milwaukee kind of needed him to step up. I think with the new contract and the talk of where he stay, where he go, going by the wayside, that's going to allow him to relax. That's going to let the Bucks really kind of the front office to relax. Everyone in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is going to be able to relax. But I think Giannis is going to have a chip on his shoulder because of the way the last 2 postseasons have ended. And I think he will his team into the NBA Finals. And that's I can see the Sixers being a lot better, and definitely you can't overlook the Boston Celtics. And of course, Brooklyn and Miami is going to be real good because for whatever reason, people won't give Ellis Spoelstra the credit he deserves for being a good coach year in and year out. I don't know why. We do, of course, but I got the Lakers and the Bucks in the NBA Finals. But I do think the Lakers being a lot better. The thing about this, they won a championship being one of the worst shooting teams in the league. The fact that they improved on that, got younger, and it's still going to be one of the top defensive teams in the year because that's what happens when Frank Vogel is a head coach, and you have a guy like Jason Kidd on your coaching staff who's all about defense as well. I got the Lakers winning in 6 games.
Okay.
Look, for the East rep, I'm going to go with the Bucks. I think GM John Horst has done an admirable job this offseason trying to improve the supporting cast around Giannis with the acquisition of All-Star Drew Holiday, one of the best 2-way guards in the NBA, being the biggest one. Look, I agree with you, Rabbi, that winning a title will depend on the Greek Freak being able to take his game to a new level in the playoffs. But adding Holiday, who was clearly the Pelicans' best player last season, putting up 19 points, 4.8 boards, and 6.7 assists in almost 35 minutes a game while providing leadership and the type of defense that had peers like Andre Iguodala, Damian Lillard, and Kevin Durant raving about, gives the Bucks a legit Robin to Giannis's Batman. Look, that's no disrespect to Chris Middleton, but he's better served, and as are the Bucks, in my opinion, being the third option and getting less defensive attention while he's on the floor with the other 2, which gives the Bucks the offense, that gives their offense the type of depth it did not have last year, and that was borne out in the playoffs where you need it most. Look, that depth and having the best player on the planet is why I think this year could be Milwaukee's year. I also agree with Anthony on the West. I have the Lakers coming out of the West. Look, the Warriors of 17 and 18 were the last to repeat as NBA champions, but the Lakers have done it 3 times in their history, most recently in 09 and 10 when Kobe led them to the double dip. Look, the Lakers winning their 17th title the same year they lost Kobe was a Hollywood ending to a season like no other. Repeating for the first time since Kobe did it would be another Hollywood-esque story. And for all the reasons I stated in our Team to Watch segment, all the roster upgrades and improvements at key positions, still having 2 MVP caliber players in LeBron and AD, who I still say are the best dynamic duo in the NBA, I am going with them to pull off the repeat. And I'll go with Anthony, 4-2 over Milwaukee.
Okay, you guys are boring. Let me review some really interesting picks. I will go Brooklyn in the East.
Wow.
Here's why I'll go Brooklyn in the East. I think Milwaukee will have one more year to gel, and I think Milwaukee is too obvious of a pick, which is why I didn't pick them last year. I think Milwaukee still has a few nooks and crannies to get to, and they haven't. And I'm also taking injuries into account. We haven't had the Giannis injury season, and I think the moment when he hits the supermax, you know something bad is going to happen. So I think when I saw LeBron James being put with the Los Angeles Lakers last year, and not honestly after AD not having a lot around him, I think I kind of got a vision. And I think once Kevin Durant comes back and comes back better than ever, I think they'll use Kyrie to kind of in a little bit of a situation where they'll put him in and out. They understand he's been brittle. And I think that team has so much depth behind him that I think it's not going to matter. I think Brooklyn has the shot to make the NBA Finals.
Wait a minute. So, Rabbi, do you have them knocking out the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, or do you have Milwaukee getting upset before then and the Nets knocking out whoever knocks off Milwaukee?
I don't know yet. I can see them beating Milwaukee in a 7-game series, a la Toronto doing it, a la Toronto doing it in 2008, in 2019. Milwaukee's good, but if you get them down, they don't get up again. Kind of like Chumbawamba, you get knocked down, but they don't get up again. They're never gonna get back up.
Excellent musical reference.
And let me piss you two off and pick the Clippers in the West. I understand Paul George is not going to be playoff P, but if Kawhi is ever going to really regain his legacy as best player of the world, now is the time. I think the Lakers just had too much. Everything went good for them last year. Obviously, not with Kobe, but on the court. LeBron and AD played pretty much a full season together, unless they sat one of them for load management season. I think this year might be different. LeBron is 37. AD has had an injury history. So let's get weird. Nets, Clippers, with the Clippers winning the NBA championship in 6 games.
Wow. All right. You know what? I mean, we're going to revisit this at the All-Star break.
Down, baby.
We always do.
Double down.
And we will see if you change your tune or double down.
I'm doubling down right now. Anthony has them going out of the first round, probably in a 7-10 playoff series. I have them winning the NBA championship. Let's go.
Look, for the several years I've been on this show, how good have I been on my predictions? I've been pretty good.
You've been good on your
A
predictions.
lot better than this guy.
That's absolutely correct, by the way.
And he's been better than me a lot of the time also. So
yes, I understand completely, but I am fighting you. I am fighting you on this.
Hey,
one.
you know what? Look,
taking my predictions.
Rabbi, as I have said on more than one show, we do not have the services of our main contrarian, Mr. Sean Roman. So I applaud you for embracing that role, even if I don't necessarily agree with who you go with.
No, I don't. But like I said, you two, well, we could talk more about this in chats, but you two are the undertakers that want to make sure that shovel brings them into the ground. So let's see if the Clippers rise from the dead.
Hey,
all right.
Hey, look, we're going to get almost a full regular NBA season, barring COVID outbreaks. So I don't know about you guys. I am so looking forward to the NBA being 99.7% back.
It's not 99%.
Yeah, by the way,
you need the crowd.
Being optimistic.
You need the crowd.
Yeah, and some good news, by the way, to knock on wood, and I'm literally on a wooden desk. Over 500 players tested this week, only 1 positive test. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the league can keep this going, that nothing crazy happens. I just read that Orlando
and you know
is
what?
going to allow 4,000 fans. So, like I say, let's keep our fingers crossed because
of course Orlando's going to allow 4,000.
We've seen other sports. It don't take much.
Hey, you know, and honestly, let's hope the NBA, now that these guys actually will get to go home after games and sleep in their own beds and won't feel, you know, the itch that they had to get out in terms of being quarantined in the bubble, that we have less stupidity like Lou Williams going after hot pepper, lemon pepper wings. And these guys actually look at what's happened in Major League Baseball, what happened in the NFL, what's happened in college football, and go, okay.
Mostly college football.
And they follow the simple premise that Mike Tomlin threw out there at the beginning of the NFL season. One fail, we all fail.
Yeah, but at least the NFL is still on time. I do have to give them credit for what they do. College sports, though, clusterfuck.
Yeah, and Rabbi, when you said way back when that you thought college football should not have been played this season, the fan in me wanted it to be played because I'm a college football fan. But, in retrospect, I got to give it to you. You were right. It probably should not have been done because these kids just cannot follow the rules.
And outside of a few bad eggs in the NFL, especially with the Ravens and Titans, the NFL has weathered a huge storm, and it looks like they're getting into what their last season is going to be. And baseball has already been smart and says they might delay till May. I think that is the best decision that they could possibly make.
And I really hope college basketball proves you wrong, Rabbi. But with once we get past the new year and kids coming back on campus, right as conference play is starting to ramp up, my concern level is higher than it was during football season.
The difference with college basketball is, number one, almost all conferences have actually prepared this. They have like a makeup week that's coming with that. And number two, I think they can easily reschedule almost on the fly. If you saw Gonzaga lost Tennessee as an opponent, I know we're getting off track here, but Gonzaga scheduled Tennessee as an opponent in the Jimmy V Classic, which is taking place in Indiana. They lost them immediately. They called up West Virginia, and in 1 hour, they got a new team. So I think unlike college football, where everything goes week to week and you want to impress TV, I think college basketball can kind of make up for that. I think we
let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. But I think college basketball is on a decent track. But again, college football is a clusterfuck. But we can get into that on the next show. All right, for Anthony Strait and Jay Kaplan, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. Again, a special thanks to David Shepard, who had time to come on before a busy NBA season starts again. Although you could say that for your boy here as well. Anyway, we're off next week. We're back on the final week of 2020 to talk about 2020. All right, social media, facebook.com/onthesportslines for the live broadcast, youtube.com/onthesportslines for what we've done before and currently do. And the link to this show will be up on @ONTH Sportslines on Twitter. Mr. Kaplan will provide you the link and click away and watch what we've just done.
Please do.
Good night. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. And we'll see you to talk about a Happy New Year when we're out next in 2 weeks.
Indeed.
Good night.
Good night.